What's up, everyone? Bob over at RCautoworks. So we got day one on this Project Del Slow. Fairly clean. Customer came in for an engine swap. It came in on a tow truck. Can't tell you what motor's going into it yet. You'll see tomorrow. So everybody wants to know the hows, the do's, the don'ts for an engine swap. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So basically when we do an engine swap, my whole saying is, if I am off that day, I should be able to come in the next day and have no clue that you pulled a motor out of a car. Which basically what I'm talking about is cleanliness. So basically the first thing I tell my guys is to disconnect the battery and drain the fluids. I'm going to walk over here, grab my tripod, set it up, do a little bit more talking. So you want to drain the fluids. Here's an all-wheel drive Civic on the dyno. Single cam. A lot of stuff going on in the shop. Anyways, step one, drain fluids and disconnect the battery. Pretty simple, huh? Let's scoop by here. Gonna get Andrew in the shot again. So as you're draining all the fluids, you have the car up in the air, have a drain pan underneath, and so on. You can work inside the engine bay. So, you know, each person's going to do it different, and there's no rhyme or reason what order you want to do it in. I myself will start disconnecting the radiator hoses. You want to remember, you want to act like this the motor's separate from the chassis, of course. You got the transmission and the engine. And then if you want to start breaking it down, you got the engine harness. So you want to separate the engine harness. I drape it over the motor. Got the two main connections. Disconnect them there, drape them on over. Disconnect the radiator hoses. So you're disconnecting the engine from the chassis, of course. It's that simple, but sometimes some people overcomplicate it. Andrew's going to go up, I believe, or crawl on the ground. He's got the drain pans underneath. Draining all the fluids while you work on up above. Everything will drain nicely. By the time you got to raise it back up in the air, or if you're doing it on the ground, you can crawl underneath and you don't got fluids going all over your face, your pants, your body, your shirt, your genitals, whatever. So disconnecting the wire harness, take off the intake. If they're not upgrading the stock airbox, you can leave it in there if you're doing like a same engine swap. Fuel lines have to be disconnected. Easiest way to disconnect one from here. This is the feed line, and over there is the return line. Then your fuel is pretty much disconnected. If you have an older Honda that has a cable trans VSS, you'll have to disconnect it from here. As we hear the antifreeze draining into the pan. And that's pretty much it for an engine swap as far as the top goes. Then you want to jack it up or put it on the lift, and you want to take out the, I myself like to do the upper ball joints. Seems a little bit easier. A lot of people want to use a pickle fork. Never use a pickle fork. No, don't do it. Some people use the, there's a ball joint tool that goes on here. We have one of those. Justin, you want to find me the ball joint tool? You know where one is at? We do have one. The other thing too though is if you take a hammer, of course when we take the tire off, take a hammer and you hit right here, the vibration should actually loosen the ball joint up. I'll try to get a video of that happening too. So once you drop the upper ball joint or the lower ball joint, whatever you want to do, whatever's easier, then you can disconnect the axles. Before you do all that too, the axle nut that's under here, loosen that up first. So when the ball joint does separate, you do not, the axle doesn't pull out of its joint if it's still on there. And then you got the shift linkage underneath and the exhaust, the famous bitch pin on the shift linkage. They sell a little punch that you can punch right through it. We have one of those. Makes our job that much easier. Ours actually is broken on the tip, but it still works, just the tip. So that's pretty much it. It's not that difficult. If you also with the trans, there's a couple ways to disconnect the slave cylinder down there. If it's a manual trans, you can disconnect the 2 bolts. There's 2 bolts right there, and you could just put it aside. Crack open the bleeder screw and you're putting it back in to relieve some pressure. You could rebleed the clutch if it needs to be rebled. What else am I forgetting? Anything? Of course, the engine mounts. You disconnect the engine mounts. Usually, if the car hasn't been touched, there'll be 4 of them. This car has 2 on the side. 1 here, 1 over there, and then 1 in the front and 1 in the back. Andrew's disconnecting the radiator hoses right now. There you go. If the radiator hose is stuck on there, little tip, secret, take pliers and just twist it a little bit to break the seal. Look at that. Andrew's my car model. So we're making progress on the engine swap. Andrew is to the point where he's going to disconnect the upper ball joint. As mentioned before, we got the nut loose, we got the cotter pin out, and the axle nut is out so it doesn't overextend the joint. As I said before, all you got to do is just hammer on the actual suspension right here or right here, wherever you want to hit. The vibration should knock it loose. There you go. If you're really going to town on it, make sure you don't hit the threads. You can put the nut back on for protection. If you are going to hit over here and you take a good swing, don't hit the fender. We've seen customers bring cars in like that, and they have said that they hit the fender. The next step is he's dropping the fork. He already took the bolts out, got the fork out right there. The axle should pop out of the hub now, and we'll repeat to the other side. There you go. There you have it. The engine's out. It was about an hour and a half or so, not bad. We'll clean up. A little bit of fluid on the floor, nothing to cry about. We're gonna get it all bolted up, make it a rolling chassis so we can roll it off the lift, and we will prep the new motor, which we will talk about tomorrow. So stay tuned. Before I forget, because I already did, there's going to be a how-to down below listed in the comments section. This should help you guys out so you don't have to keep going back and forth in the video. Anyone else has any other questions, ask below, shoot us an email, or call us. You can talk to me on the phone. Please like, share, subscribe if you found this helpful so I can keep doing more and more videos like this to help you guys out.